Good evening and welcome to the broadcast. I am Ben Kitili, live from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us on this 15th day of January 2017, a day before the second and last phase of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission's mass voter registration exercise kicks off across the country tomorrow. Our sign language interpreter at the bottom end of your screen is Maesha Owiti. Checkpoints begins now. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, will from tomorrow begin the last phase of mass voter registration, targeting between 4 million and 6 million new voters. As KTN News reporter Muremi Mwangi now tells us, every ward countrywide will have between 3 and 10 biometric voter registration kits for the month-long exercise.
With over 15.9 million Kenyans already registered as voters, the country's electoral agency, IEBC, will be targeting a minimum of 4 million new voters from the over 9 million Kenyans with national identity cards, but who are yet to be registered as voters.
For one to be registered as a voter, he or she must be a Kenyan of 18 years of age and above, have an original national identification card or a valid Kenyan passport. And they must present themselves physically at the registration center of their choice.
But registered voters seeking to transfer from their previous polling stations will only be allowed to do so at the IEBC constituency offices. IEBC says the move is meant to allow the clerks to concentrate on the registration of new voters. But analysts argue it could be a strategy by IEBC to scuttle the mass importation of voters by politicians, which has been witnessed in the run-up to previous elections.
We have an office in each of the 290 constituencies. And if you do not know where the location is, we have that information on the website.
During the exercise, IEBC will use 7,793 BVR kits, which is an increase from the 5,756 used in the last mass voter registration. Of these, every county assembly ward will have a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 10 kits for the exercise. The month-long voter registration is likely to be the next battlefront between the main political outfits as the jostle for numbers intensifies ahead of the August 8th polls.
Let us put everything else aside. All of us. Let's put everything else aside. Let us go and get everybody registered as a voter.
Go and collect your IDs, register as voters, and turn out to vote in large numbers.
Pursuant to the IEBC criteria for distribution of the BVRs, based on the geographical size of the wards, there will be 275 kits in Nairobi, 625 across northeastern, 711 kits at the coast, 783 in western, 842 in central Kenya, 1,030 in Nyanza, 1,302 in northeastern region, and 2,225 across the Rift Valley.
A list of distribution can be accessed on the Commission's website, and the list will basically show you the distribution of kits per county assembly ward, constituency, and at the county level.
We are going to start a drive with members of parliament and all stakeholders to make sure that those who are registered collect their IDs, and then after collecting the IDs, they also register as voters.
Now, should the IEBC meet its target and register 6 million new voters, then some 22 million Kenyans will participate in the 2017 polls. However, the spotlight now turns to the 9 million potential voters, most of who are yet to collect their national IDs. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thank you, Muremi. Now, a push by CORD leader Raila Odinga to have the opposition present a compromise candidate in this year's election is fueling political debate. But political commentators say the quest for a united opposition to kick out Jubilee from power will remain a pipe dream unless leaders in the opposition sacrifice personal interest. Here's tonight's edition of Spotlight 2017.
Telltale signs that the August general election might witness a repeat of the 2002 political battle came alive on Wednesday at the historic Bomas of Kenya, when top guns in opposition led hundreds of their members in crafting a strategy of removing Jubilee Party from power. And they made it clear in their fiery live speeches as they spelled out their next course of action.
We are here to make all of us understand that the only enemy we have and our country has is Jubilee. Divided we shall fall and the country will continue to suffer. Only our unity shall salvage what remains of our country.
It appears the lessons of 2012 were not lost on the opposition leaders as they challenged each other to remain true to their cause. At that time, Musalia Mudavadi left Raila Odinga by wayside, breaking an alliance that had lasted all through the Grand Coalition government.
As we sit here, each one of us is just but the first among equals. And if we don't embrace that, then we are being enemies from within.
And this time, we will not allow any betrayal in our ranks. Hapa tutahakikisha kwamba tuko kitu kimoja. And therefore, if he's going to negotiate, whoever is going to be the flag bearer will put everything on the table. Everything on the table. I have sacrificed before. I'm ready to sacrifice again.
Kenya has been tested to the limit these last 4 years. It cannot stand another 5 years of Jubilee.
Let our unity not be a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Kwa hivyo nawauliza, should our presence here signify nothing? It must signify something. It must signify change for the people of Kenya.
Dr. Walter Ongeti, a governance and strategy consultant, says Jubilee might be forced to go back to the drawing board and craft a counter-strategy to tame the now reloaded opposition.
Of course, when it comes to perception, the fact that CORD is now sort of painting a picture that we are pulling people from across the country, leaders and so forth, that perception is what Jubilee has to be concerned about. Because the moment CORD is able to, or NASA is able to convince the masses that, look, Jubilee is a two-community kind of organization or alliance, then that perception may eat into the thinking just for perceptual purposes. But what will really determine the success in the next elections would largely be a scenario that is created by the registration of voters.
He, however, says, just like in 2007, power struggle that saw Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila Odinga split the orange, a similar breakup might strike if they drop their guard.
In strategy and indeed organizational behavior, one critical thing that may make NASA hold is what we call group dynamics. NASA in group dynamics is just at the forming stage. And so at the forming stage, they will be nice to each other, those things you had them mention the other day at Bomas. But now when they will be at the storming stage, that is when we will now see if it can really hold together. And this will actually come immediately after the registration of voters. How will it come about? That if each of these guys, henchmen or appointmen, go to their constituencies and counties and they mobilize numbers, they'll come back now to the table for negotiation. And that is where the rubber will meet the road.
They say history repeats itself. History is going to repeat itself in 2017 in the coalition, if they do not reinvent the wheel.
Tunawahakikishia ya kwamba
at the moment, all eyes are on Western Kenya leaders, whose unity many pundits say will be a game changer for the opposition.
The thinking around NASA is that there is nothing revolutionary that is going to come about. But remember again the worst tragedy that has been around the politics of CORD is that CORD counts on failures of Jubilee than creating what we call a blue ocean strategy. Blue ocean meaning that you can create your own thinking that is outside whether your competitor is failing or whatever it is. What value proposition can CORD bring on the table to convince a voter in central Kenya that vote for a CORD candidate? Additionally, the worst tragedy that has also been facing CORD, and perhaps they will be addressing it so that Jubilee is worried, is how they structure themselves, especially after the leadership structure.
There's also the question of how long will they keep secret their political trump card.
People have been anxiously waiting, and the principals must be told that they have kept their country waiting for too long about who is going to be the presidential candidate. We cannot afford to wait until May or April.
For now, the seemingly rejuvenated opposition is set to hold joint rallies in their strongholds to push their supporters to register as voters. Duncan Hemba, KTN.
Let's stay with politics, shall we? And after months of speculation, former Gatanga Member of Parliament Peter Kenneth has finally declared that he will vie for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat. Speaking after attending a church service in Roysambu, Kenneth was accompanied by several Jubilee politicians from Nairobi County, said his desire to be governor of Nairobi is largely hinged on the need to offer leadership and financial integrity to the capital city county.
Nairobi, with its diversity, requires a manager with a track record, a manager who has worked and proven that he can work, because the only way services can be provided in this city can only be provided by a manager with a track, not just any other manager. The current guy is a manager but no track. It's now very clear, and I've made it absolutely clear, that I'm running for the position of governor in Nairobi. But the most important thing now is to ensure every unregistered person in our country registers to be a voter.
Today is the 42nd day into the doctors' strike with no solution in sight. The Kenya Union of Clinical Officers has now also issued an ultimatum to the government to address their grievances, or they will also go on strike beginning the 22nd of this month.
42 days and counting. The current doctors' impasse still prevailing. Which way forward? Kenya's public health sector remains bleeding. Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar and Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. jointly with other stakeholders are planning to convene a joint forum on Thursday, January the 19th, to bring together all parties as an initial step towards ending the crisis. One of the interventions being explored is invoking the Senate's mandate as health is a devolved function.
The ruling of Justice Monica Mbaru gave force to that CBA. Yes. Any other jurisdiction of similar quantum cannot purport to nullify. Let's just have the stakeholder forum, and the only thing is to prepare a roadmap, a return to work for doctors upon which these kind of commitments of the CBA will be honored in total.
The courts, now at the center of the saga, the senators say, must be progressive in defining the path toward the resolution. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. will also join the legal team to assist the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union to avert the possibility of imprisonment on account of contempt.
That is why I've offered my legal services pro bono to doctors of this country, so that we can see a return to work of doctors and a negotiation on a table where nobody is holding a gun under the table and nobody is holding a card for doctors.
Meanwhile, the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers has now issued an ultimatum to the government to address their grievances, or else they will also lay down their tools starting on the 22nd of this month. The union's national officials say they will not issue a strike notice as they had already suspended their pending resolution by the national government.
We cannot allow it, our sister unions, the officials to be arrested, and that forms a precedent so that any time a labor dispute is established, then intimidation is what is going to carry the day.
But will this effort succeed when negotiations with both the national and county governments have failed? Doctors maintain the CBA is not just about the money, but better healthcare for all. But as more time passes, the more the ordinary Kenyan at the margins of privilege continues to suffer. Dorcas Wangera, KTN News, Nairobi.
Back to some political news now. Former Minister Nicholas Biwott, once Majority Leader in the National Assembly, Aden Duale to apologize to retired President Daniel Arap Moi. Biwott is accusing Duale of defaming the retired president by claiming that he hid in a bush. Biwott's sentiments were shared by the Nandi Hills MP Alfred Keter.
There was no incident where Moi was found in a bush by anybody, because it is like I've said, it belittles his personality. Moi is a personality that at one time he was in a bush and he was a sitting president, because in 1982 it was an attempted coup. It did not succeed, and there was no time where Moi was found in a bush. He was in Kabarak, as it has been stated very clearly, and he was taken to, by his escort straight to State House, where it was announced very clearly that the architects of the coup did not succeed.
It's fitting for Duale himself to apologize, so that the people can take it easy and continue in a normal way. To say that he was fetched from the bush means that Moi had gone there to hide, which is absolutely nonsense. Never did.
So now switch gears a bit, shall we? It is exactly 1 year since the morning of January 15th, 2016, when Al-Shabaab fighters attacked and overran an AMISOM Ford operating base garrisoned by Kenya Defence Forces from the 9th Rifle Battalion. The Kenya government has remained tight-lipped. The number of soldiers who were deployed at the El Ade base when the attack occurred. And there has also not been any official confirmation of the casualties. Well, tonight we pay tribute to our soldiers and their families who were directly or indirectly affected by the El Ade attack. We begin this coverage in Eldoret with this report from Elvis Koskei.
On the same date last year, terror group Al-Shabaab launched one of the most vicious attacks on Kenyan forces at El Ade, killing an undisclosed number of Kenyan troops. It was around that time that pupils at Shama Academy in Soi constituency, just 6 kilometers from Brickwick's training school, Moi Barracks, had officially reopened for their first term in school. While the attack occurred hundreds of miles away in Somalia, its effects reverberated at this school. A somber mood descended here as many pupils in this institution learnt with shock and bitterness that they had been left fatherless. 10 soldiers who are parents and guardians of 22 pupils at Shama Primary School were among those killed in the El Ade attack. To Consolata Wanjiku, the director of the school, the attack is still vivid.
Na nakumbuka kuna mzazi anaitwa Ekdor, kuna Cheserek, kuna mzazi alikuwa anaitwa Cheserek, na wazazi hao kwanza nakumbuka ilikuwa siku ya Jumatano juu ilikuwa mwanzo wa mwaka, tulikuwa tumezungumza na wao na wameniambia jinsi watakavyolipa karo yao, lakini sudden death ikawachukua.
Wanjiku says the sad news hit them hard, the worst being children whose parents had either died or gone missing.
Walikuwa yatima kama Monica Wamboi, na wakati alifariki dunia immediately after Monica Wamboi kuingia katika darasa la 8, ikawa ni kama imestop, msaada wake umestop.
Wakati baba yangu aliaga dunia, lenses zangu zilikuwa rahisi kupatikana kwa sababu mama yangu amekuwa mwenyewe akikazana tu kunisomesha.
Grow up nitakuwa athletics, nikuja nisaidia mamangu na yatima na wajane.
Wazazi hao kwanza walikuwa wazazi wazuri sana. Walikuwa wazazi ambao wanalipa karo ya shule, wana clear hata 1 year. Wakienda Somalia, hata mtu ana communicate, anasema in case of any balance, niambie.
As this widow clears painful memories of losing her husband, Sergeant Mohamed Anunda, Amy Anunda's resilience seems to have given in as the state delayed to give her compensation for the loss of her deceased love.
Naumiza sana. Kwa sababu maneno mengi angekuwa hatungekuwa venye tuko saizi. Angekuwa ametutendea mengi. Maisha yetu haingekuwa venye iko saizi. Watoto wangekuwa na furaha, wangekuwa na huzuni. Sasa aswa tukikumbuka siku ya leo, watoto tumeamuka na huzuni sana. Tukasema sasa ni mwaka moja sasa tuna baba na maisha imefikia penye imefikia. Na sasa miaka ikiendelea hapo mbele tutakuwa aje?
Sasa nilikuwa naomba serikali kama anaweza kutuendelea kutusupport na kutusaidia waone mali ya watoto watafika kwa masomo.
Amy remembers the unkept promise made by her husband during their last conversation about the purchase of a bigger land. Instead, the widow is now facing a huge task of educating her children. Already 2 of her children who are in secondary school have dropped out, leaving 2 others still struggling in primary school.
Wameenda kazi ya nje, hawako wameenda kwa raha zao. Lakini sasa kwa sababu wa kurudi, tunaomba serikali wasituache, watufuatilie na waone watoto wetu wamefanya vizuri, wameendelea, wamekuwa na hiyo maisha yenye baba wao walikuwa wamewapea.
Watuangalie pia sisi, kwa sababu sisi yenyewe hatuna saizi nguvu tuseme kuna mtu akukandidwa na tusupport, hakuna.
Monica Wamboi, who also lost her father in the attack, is among the pupils who performed well after scoring 358 marks out of the maximum possible 500 marks.
Hadi wakati usijaenda shule, ningependa mnisaidie niweze kujoin secondary kwa sababu shosho ana uwezo ya juezi saizi, ni mgonjwa, hawezi kufanya kazi yoyote.
But her dream of joining Musoli Girls in Kakamega County appears shattered as her healing grandmother is unable to meet her high school fees.
Hapa nyumbani changamoto ambazo napitia ni nyingi sana. Saa zingine shosho akiwa mgonjwa hatawezi kula, hata saa ingine hatuwezi pata chakula, saa ingine tunakaanga njaa kuanzia asubuhi hadi jioni.
At 14, having lost her mother and brothers in 2007, post-election violence, Wamboi is however unshaken and determined to live her dreams of becoming an excellent journalist, despite the cloud of poverty clouding her future. The common loss of their loved husband has made Amy and Elizabeth to become great friends, who a day cannot pass without them spending a time together. They are now calling the government to come and assist them educate their children. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Lengut Village, Uasin Gishu County.
And for a story there. And still on LRD, it has been 12 months of despair, anguish and hope to a Bungoma family following the disappearance of their only son during the Al-Shabaab attack on the LRD KDF camp in Somalia. KTN News Western Kenya regional reporter Robert Wanyonyi visited the family and now reports.
When he joined the Kenya Defence Forces in 2012, his family was full of joy that at least one of them has gained meaningful employment. Wycliffe Wabomba was the only working family member from the family of Mzee Patrick Wabomba in Maeni village, Sirisia constituency in Bungoma County. But the attack on the El Ade KDF camp in Somalia, where Kenyan soldiers were killed and others taken hostage, will forever remain a sad memory for this family.
Mimi mtoto wangu alikuwa KDF na alipotea. Walikuwa wameenda Somali kazi. Bila walienda Somali kazi, mambo ya El Ade, kafi ya El Ade, bila mambo yenye yalifanyika huko hatujui, sisi hatujamuwahi kumuona. Wengine wamepata watu wao, lakini kijana wetu huyu tangu wakati ule hatujamuona, hatujui chenye kilifanyika. Hata serikali haijatuonyesha ni nini kilifanyika.
Since that fateful day, the family has made all necessary efforts to get any information about their son.
Hasa ilikuwa tegemeo huyo ni kijana. Hasa mimi nasema yote na waachia Mungu, kwa maana huyu Mungu ndiye alikupea huyu kijana. Ninaendelea kuomba kama ako ama kama watu walienda naye kama ako. Kweli ninaomba tu Mungu afanye ishara halafu amrudishe kupitia kwa nguvu ya Mungu.
The only assistance the family has received has been from an ungovernmental organization, Oasis of Hope, a group that offers free counseling sessions to affected families.
We have been close to this family. We have been here for the last maybe 2 sessions, and I, being from this county, have been close to this family to be together with them, to be able to desensitize them on the stress and the emotional stress they are going through as a result of their son going missing, as a result of that Al-Ade attack.
Kwa boma yetu yeye ndiye alikuwa dekemeo letu, na saa hii ameondoka. Hatujui penye yako, na hatujui atarudi lini. Kama inawezekana mchukue familia mtu mmoja. Kama bado tunaendelea kungoja, huyu aendelee kufanya kazi akisaidia familia. Mzee na watoto ndikana wasome, ana wajukuu ndikana wasaidiwe. Sasa mimi naomba serikali, Rais Uhuru atusaidie kama familia na watu wa KDF tupate haki ya kijana wetu. Unless familia inaweza endelea, watoto wake wanaweza soma, hata watoto wa mzee wanaweza soma.
And just like many other Kenyans, the family's parting shot is for the government to systematically pull out Kenyan troops still on duty in Somalia.
The government should be able to ensure that we put the priority and welfare of our workers or our citizens first before the neighborhood. Like what happened in Southern Sudan, just changing card, the government responded very fast. Here lives are being lost and the government is quiet. So sometimes as Kenyans we ask, where is he? It's like a double standard being played in this case.
Days have turned into months, and it's now a year since Wycliffe Wabomba went missing during the other attack in Somalia. But the family is pained by the fact that there is no information forthcoming from the government side. Robert Wanyonyi, KTN News, in Sirisia, Bungoma County.
All right, you're watching Checkpoints here on KTN News and KTN. Many thanks for staying with us. When we return, remember our top story tonight, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission begins, that is tomorrow, begins the second and final phase of mass voter registration targeting between 4 million and 6 million new voters. When we return, we're bringing you our Checkpoint discussion. Earlier, we did speak to the CEO of the IEBC, Ezra Chiloba. Stand by for that. So in our Checkpoint discussion tonight, let's bring in the CEO of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, Ezra Chiloba, to just shed some, put perspective in some of the issues surrounding the mass voter registration, the second phase that begins on Monday. Bwana CEO, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, if you can just take us through the process, just how will the biometric voter registration kits be distributed? Maybe how many clerks are we looking at?
First of all, you'll note that this will be the second mass voter registration campaign that we are launching, and it is the last campaign before the next election. So if there is someone out there who has not been able to register as a voter, there's an opportunity for them to register, because we're not going to have any other registration after 14th of February. It's going to take 30 days, and we're going to use biometric registration system, the one that we acquired for the 2013 general elections. So far, we've been able to deploy 7,793 kits across the country, and the least a county assembly ward can get will be 3 kits. And we are talking about county assembly wards of 4 square kilometers, 3 square kilometers. So then the largest distribution will be in vast county assemblies, North Horr and Upper Eastern, where we're going to see that each county assembly ward is going to get at least 10 kits per ward. So we expect that all voters who are not or potential voters who are not registered and they're eligible to register, they're going to show up during this period. And so far, we have been able to deploy also about 21,000 officers in the field to be able to carry out this exercise.
Is there a standard procedure maybe? There were instances where BVR kits or clerks were moving from place to place.
Right.
Or are they going to be stationary? Is there a standard procedure maybe to make sure you reach as many or registered voters as possible?
Yeah, what we've done this time around is that given the number of kits, first of all, we've increased the number of kits. And secondly, for county assembly wards, which are smaller in size, for example, Portrees, county assembly number 1, is 4 square kilometers. It has got 3 registration centers, and it's going to get 3 kits. It means that that center will have a kit for a period of 30 days.
Okay.
You don't have to move from one point to the other. However, the other areas whereby you'll get registration kits being in one center for a minimum of 10 days before they move to the next center.
Right.
So we've tried to balance that. Previously, of course, you show up at a registration center, you were told the kit was here yesterday,
yes.
and we didn't have enough of them. We didn't have enough officers to deploy at the particular time. But this time around is a little bit different. But what is also important to note is that we've been able to open up the kits so that if you're in a particular constituency and you want to register to vote in a particular ward, you have an opportunity to register anywhere within the particular constituency where you're going to find the kit. Okay. So that also works to reduce the distance and increase the number of people who
you're targeting between 4 to 6 million, if I'm correct.
Right.
In the first phase, that was in the beginning of last year, you were targeting 4 million. You got slightly more than 1 million. What have you done differently this time around?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have always targeted actually 8 million additional voters on the voters roll from the 2013 register. Our target of 4 million in the first round was not achieved, partly because of the constraints of budget. We had requested government to allocate us 2 billion Kenyan shillings. We ended up getting only 500 million Kenyan shillings. That meant that the number of kits that we deployed were much less. The number of officers to deploy to the field were much less. We did not have enough resources for mobilization. This time around, we've actually recruited 2,900 community-based voter educators or mobilizers to work hand in hand with local leaders to ensure that people know where the kits are, and also to just emphasize the importance of registration. So then, of course, we're going to have an enhanced media campaign around the registration. Then lastly, of course, we've been able to engage with the different actors. We met the media on Monday last week. We met civil society organizations, religious leaders. We also met political parties. And we hope that this time around, because of the interest of the elections, we're going to have a very high turnout.
All right. Yeah. If you can just tell our viewers maybe how the voter roll looks like right now, how many voters are registered, and how many do you intend or do you target to have overall on the 8th of August?
In 2013, first of all, we had 14.4 million voters on the voters roll. Following the continuous registration exercise that we carried out post-2013, as well as a mass voter registration campaign in February, March last year, by December last year, the record shows that we have about 15.9 million records of registered voters. Mark you, that does not, it still includes what we may call dead voters, whose data we are still processing. We have to receive it from the Register of Births and Deaths, but at least in terms of records, we have 15.9 million voters. Our expectation is that if we get 4 million in addition to that, that takes you all the way to 20 million voters before the next election.
All right. This is also, there's something that many Kenyans don't know about, that is a continuous voter registration, which is usually always ongoing in the constituency offices.
Right.
During this mass voter registration, you also set to scale up the facilitation of voter education. Many people ask, why doesn't the IEBC do continuous voter education to make people know and understand that the registration is ongoing all the time, rather than spend a lot of time and money in this 1 month only?
Well, I mean, it's not cheap. Voter education is not cheap. That means every day you must be in the media talking about continuous voter registration after one election to the other election. So we made the strategic choice that Kenyans respond very well during mass campaigns like this ones. So the investment in voter education program during the continuous voter registration is not that high compared to what we have now, partly because of the potential, because of human behavior of the potential voters. So we think there'll be a lot of excitement in such a campaigns, and people are going to really turn out to register. And the output of the continuous voter registration has always been lower compared to the mass voter registration campaigns.
Speaking of human behavior, have you made maybe a provision for the last 2 weeks or so? Because Kenyans are not for the last minute rush to try and do something.
Yes.
This will not be, probably not be different.
What we're encouraging Kenyans is that, look, we got 30 days. And for you to be able to register at your convenience, take a chance to register early. Because we'll delay towards the end and there'll be a lot of pressure. And there's also a chance that you might miss out on the last day. So what we're saying during our voter education engagements is to encourage those eligible voters to actually go there early enough, as opposed to waiting until the last minute.
All right. The issue of national identity cards has come up a lot, especially in political rallies. Is there anything, is the national government doing anything to facilitate IEBC in terms of people being, especially young people, first-time voters probably, being able to get their IDs in time to register?
I'll say about two things on that matter. One is that registration is undertaken by the National Registration Bureau. That is issuance of ID cards. And the challenge, I think, that they've faced over time has been that of collection. People register, but they do not go back to collect their national IDs. As of last year, we're talking about 600,000. So what we've encouraged our officers to do in the field is to collaborate with the National Registration Bureau offices, as well as the local leaders, especially the chiefs, to ensure that the people who had applied for IDs actually reached out to ensure that they actually come and collect their IDs. We have some of the successful cases, success stories like in Isiolo, where some of our officers worked very closely with the National Registration Bureau, and they moved from one point to the other, following on those eligible registrants to ensure that they collect the IDs. And during the continuous registration, then they were also registered. It's the same thing that we're looking at this time around, and we hope that the provincial administration, ward administrators as the county government branch will also be keen on ensuring that people who have applied for ID cards go collect those ID cards. So those are the modalities that we're working with.
Some Kenyans will be asking, what about those with waiting cards, what are called waiting cards?
Yeah, waiting cards, one is that it's no longer part of the law. In the last election, Parliament enacted a law that would allow people with waiting cards to register as voters. But given the challenges around the waiting cards, waiting card does not give you an identity number. It's just a waiting card. So that means that when you show up at the polling day and show up with an ID card, it means that that ID card will not be consistent with the data that is on the waiting card. So we requested Parliament to delete that particular provision.
All right.
And so if you're not registered, if you don't have an ID card, then you will not be allowed to register.
All right. As we speak, a lot of politicians and political players are going around the country, trying to mobilize their supporters to come out in large numbers and register as voters. According to the IEBC, what is the best, most legal way, so to speak, of doing this, of mobilizing, Kenyans to register as voters without breaking the law?
One, I think, if there's something that political parties or political actors must agree on, is that registration is important. You can only talk about solid competition if you have voters on the register, if you know where your supporters are and encourage them to register as voters. If you don't do that, of course, the rest may not work for you.
Yeah.
So what we are saying this time around is that, look, let us have a common interest of ensuring that all eligible Kenyans are registered as voters. Number two, the methods you use must not be methods that are going to discriminate against any potential voters. And number three, while you will collaborate with the Commission, do not portray the Commission as your partner. What you're going to see out there is people are going to come up with billboards and they'll say, okay, so-and-so is running for this particular position. We want you to register as voters in partnership with IEBC. There are those calls. Right. So what we are saying that you can do that campaign, yes, but you cannot suggest that IEBC has endorsed you. So it must be a neutral type of collaboration. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There have been, and I have been able to listen to some of them, a lot, some music that is aimed at mobilizing voter registration at an ethnic level. There have been reports of vernacular radio station also calling out to their members to come out and support a particular, candidate, political candidate in an ethnic kind of way. What is the Commission's take on ethnic mobilization?
Well, there are risks in ethnic mobilization, no doubt about that. But our politics is also ethnic-based. So what we can only say is that we must find ways of mobilizing voters to the extent that we do not appear discriminative. We should not discriminate others by virtue of the fact that you want to win elections based on your ethnic bloc. So my take is that we should not take the risk of mobilizing people to the extent that when the outcome of the election is declared, we are likely to relapse into some sense of ethnic feeling that you've been excluded from the process. Right. In an open society like ours, I think pushing towards inclusion is far much better than trying to concentrate on your own ethnic base, because eventually you are leaders of the entire nation, but not ethnic bases.
What would you say to those who say that the IEBC has a better image at this point? There are critics who say that the reason why the Kenyan electoral body registered very paltry numbers in the first phase of the mass voter registration was because of a very bad image at that time. Do you believe that the IEBC has a better image today?
No, I wouldn't take it that way, because for us who are hands-on planning for the exercise, we know where the constraints were. We knew that we did not have enough budget, we do not have enough kits out in the field, we do not have enough resources to mobilize voters. So those limitations have consequences on the outcome. And of course, elections where people were seeing elections as far away. But now I can tell you is that if you look at the two main coalitions, they already launched voter registration campaign without our own intervention. Right. Our job was to declare the date and to deploy people. But you can see there's a lot of interest in that. I think it's much more than that. It's much more because of the coming elections, as opposed to really the Commission itself. For us, where we are, we do our job professionally, and we remain to be professional. So, and the judgment will be left to Kenyans to make.
What about those who cast aspersions, especially from the political class, on the IEBC time and time again? Does that have any effect on how the Commission works? Making the confidence of Kenyans, reducing the confidence Kenyans have on the electoral body continuously in political rallies. Does that affect how the Commission works?
Well, You know that it's because of the same narrative that we've ended up having some changes to the commission. And for us, our commitment has been that whatever happens in the political space, we must remain professional. We must deliver on our constitutional mandate. We must resort to the rule of law so that it's not about us appeasing the political class. We do that, we lose. Our game is to ensure that we are faithful to the Constitution. You may dislike us because we respect the Constitution, but that does not mean that we have, therefore, to manipulate the Constitution to suit your interests. So we just want to encourage the political class that at the end of the day, we're joined by the Constitution. And when the Commission says something and does something that is unconstitutional, there are avenues to sort out some of those issues. And we are not perfect. So, and we also mean well for this country. In fact, that's our own commitment, that we must do what's in the best interest of the entire spectrum of Kenyans.
All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, maybe you don't know this, but when should Kenyans expect the new commissioners to be in office? Will they be taking charge of this voter registration?
Yeah, we had always expected that they report on time so that they be part and parcel of the registration exercise. Our own projections were such that we will start registration. First of all, we put a date of 20th December, but when we realized that the new commission will not be in place, we pushed it to January 13th in terms of planning. But then we realized that it's not going to be possible. So we said, okay, we must start on the 16th, come what may, because there are certain legal timelines that we must abide by. And if you work backwards, it only makes it necessary that we have that registration starting much earlier. So we looking forward that maybe the new commission is sworn in this week, towards the end of this week.
All right.
If Parliament approves the names on Tuesday, then of course they'll join us in the exercise.
Speaking of
That's
which,
deep end.
Right, yeah, good. It will be.
Yeah.
How are you doing in terms of the timelines that you released in the beginning of last year?
Yes, in the beginning of last year, we had a clear roadmap of the elections. This exercise that we were doing was supposed to have been done much earlier. However, when the debate about the future of the commission started, it went to the extent that the law was changed to affect the timelines that we had. Certain new activities were introduced, and now it was for us to adjust our program to suit the new legal framework. And that's why we're doing the things we're doing now to at least catch up with the remaining critical activities for purposes of the elections. So as we sit now, what is critical is we must complete the voter registration exercise, because our intention is to have the register ready 30 days before the election. And when I mean 30 days before the election, it means we must be able to certify it and publish it, make it available to our constituency offices across the country as well. So that is our major investment. The second bit has been about technology to be used in the elections.
Yes.
We all started very well. We knew where we wanted to go with the technology in terms of revamping the system that we had. But the new law that became operational October 4th last year, it required us to change the specifications of the technology that we were to deploy in elections. That took us time. We advertised last year. Yeah. Now we have a court, a review board matter over the same. Yeah. So there's going to be a little bit of delays, and that's what concerns us really. But we are optimistic that at least 60 days before the election, as the law requires, we must have that technology in place, be able to test it to the satisfaction of all the actors.
Speaking of, what is the latest on that, and what's the way forward over the technology, especially the BVR kits?
Not BVR kits. We are calling it the Kenya Integrated Election Management System.
All right.
Which combines both, which brings together voter registration, voter identification, and results transmission. We've added one with respect to candidate registration to make it more seamless and more useful. We advertised last year, and we are hoping that the matter will be resolved in the course of the week so that we'll be able to move forward. We are always optimistic that we did the right things, and whoever has an issue, then the board is the only place that you can clear that. So we hope that by the end of this week or end of this month, that matter will be sorted out so that we move forward.
All right.
Yeah.
How are you going? Are you planning as a commission to incorporate Kenyans in the diaspora in a much better way this time round?
Yeah, you know that last time what we did is that we went to the East African countries, the 4 of them.
Yeah.
The projections we had were not achieved. We ended up having about 3,000 or so voters in the diaspora. Our intention is to go back to the East African countries, plus one more region. And that one more region is a decision that we'll have to make at a policy level. We had hoped that the new commissioners will come on board so that we'll be able to advise them in terms of the options that are available to progressively address the issues of the diaspora voters.
All right.
Yep.
This is a question that a lot of people ask me to elaborate for them. That is, if somebody wants to change their vote, if I registered at, Ward A or polling center A and I want to move, what does it take? And what will be the limitations?
Well, the law is also clear on the matter in terms of what needs to happen. If you want to change your electoral area or the place where you intend to vote, you go to the registration officer, in this case, our constituency officer, to be able to fill a form. We call it Form C. You'll fill that particular form and your details will be taken. Then they'll be further processed through our central database to effect those changes. Now, what we observed, for example, in the last registration is that there were so many people who were requesting to move their registration or their voting centers. And we did not expect those numbers. This time around, we still expect high numbers. However, we've put in place administrative measures so that if you go to our constituency offices, you're going to find there our registration officer with a clerk who is going to process your application for purposes of transfer. And you must go to the place where you want now to go vote.
Right.
Yeah.
If there was a politician, a cheeky politician, Ben Kitili is a cheeky politician, wants to, he has a lot of supporters in a particular place and wants to bring them to Nairobi where he is, what has the IEBC done to make sure they mitigate such plans?
Okay, I would have given you another version of it, but I get your point.
Go ahead.
Look, the law does not prohibit someone from registering anywhere in this country.
All right.
You can register anywhere. Previously, the law was such that you needed to prove residency, that you have to confirm that you've been living in this particular place for the last six months before you're allowed to register. Right. The current law does not, and that's why you find this behavior of people switching from one point to the other. However, from where we sit, we discourage conduct that is likely to cause unnecessary tension in particular places. Because if you deliberately transport people from one area to another and you have a reaction from the locals, that is basically a security matter. And that's what we're actually discouraging. And we're also requesting the National Commission on Integration to monitor this and be able to take necessary action to discourage situations whereby people are moving. And usually, our own experience that it follows some ethnic pattern. So we want that to be discouraged because there could be a security element in that matter.
All right. I wouldn't let you go without asking you this. It has been talked about much. The contentious, I don't know if they are contentious, electoral laws that were passed by the Senate the other day and assented to by the President. I don't know if it's a done deal, but are you as a commission satisfied with the way that law was drafted, the provisions, especially that particular one of manual backup? I'm using the lay language here.
Right.
But are you satisfied as a commission?
What we only say is that it could have been much better than what we eventually got ourselves to.
Right.
Much better in the sense that what stakeholders needed to do was to understand what the issue was. Yeah. And I can tell you also is that when the law was passed, was first drafted, we as a commission were not really consulted in terms of the operational implications of the law. And we tried to intervene, but we were told we were too late. So much later, when we decided to put our issues on file so that people don't come later on to say the commission never told us, we put our issues on file. And that's where the debate started. However, the solutions were not necessarily the ones that the commission had suggested. And perhaps for us, we are much more conservative.
And what were your issues?
Our issues were, for example, a voter comes up at the polling station.
Right.
You are supposed to identify them using biometric kits. What happens if we are not able to identify that voter using the biometric system?
Right.
That was really the simple question, because our responsibility as the Commission is to ensure that all registered voters must be given the rightful place to vote. And we cannot use administrative measures to prevent them from voting. So we had just gone back to say there are certain cases where voters usually show up at the polling station and we're not able to identify their biometric, identify them using biometric system. So we want an alternative mechanism that can enable us actually to allow this voter to vote. And we said, why not use the Ghanaian model? Ghana does actually identify voters using biometric. However, there is about 1% of voters who, for one reason or the other, may not be identified using the biometrics. And Ghana has a card, a barcoded card. So when they show up and the machine indicates that it's not able to identify the voter, they'll now enter the details of on the card in the system, and the image of the voter will show up. So instead of using the biometric, the people at the registration center, including the presiding officer, the polling station, including the presiding officer and the agents, can confirm that actually this person is the one who claims, using visual confirmation. And by the way, we do that also in our elections. All the by-elections where we've had a voter that we're not able to identify them, we identify them visually by keying the text details of the registration ID. The image shows up and people confirm is the one. So we wanted to have that also in law. Otherwise, the manner in which the law was crafted is such that such a people will not be allowed to vote.
Right.
Okay? So that is how we went to the committee. But eventually, of course, things took their own course. Now, the law says the Commission shall put in place a complementary mechanism that is simple, accurate, to ensure that, technology is well used in the election.
Right.
You see, what does complementary mean? The Commission is being given the discretion to determine which system, which mechanism to use. It doesn't even say manual, you see. So we have to, at some point, agree on this complementary mechanism.
Right.
And I think eventually the country is going to agree. We're going to come up with proposals, and we'll all agree and move on.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great talking to you, shedding light on a lot of issues for Kenyans. Talking to Ezra Chiloba, the CEO of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, ahead of the launch, the beginning of the second phase of the mass voter registration exercise.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Time now to give you the latest results and action from the pitches. That is on KTN Sports. Now, Orange Telecom successfully retained the African Club Championship title, that is the women's title, after defeating Ghana Revenue Authority 2-0 in the final played here in Nairobi. The win gives Orange their 9th African crown and their 5th in a row. In the men's final, Eastern Company from Egypt also successfully retained their title after defeating Kenya's Police 3-2 in a penalty shootout.
Sunday afternoon, City Park Stadium in Nairobi was the place to be as the Africa Hockey Club Championship came to a conclusion. In the ladies' final, the battle was between champions Orange Telecom, who are seeking a 5th consecutive title, and in their way stood Ghana Revenue Authority. It took the Kenyan champions 12 minutes to find their footing as Jackie Mwangi sounded the balls to give them the lead. The goal seemed to rattle the Ghanaians, who dominated much of the first half without finding an answer. After the breather, the 8-time African champions came back fresh, and 7 minutes into the second half, Teresia Juma doubled the lead to give Orange their 5th straight African crown and the 9th in the competition.
And I believe our fans have seen the way we played the club champs. Now they have no doubt that it's never a flash in the pan, like a fluke in the pan. We do it, and we do it convincingly.
In the men's final, Kenya Police took on defending champions Eastern Company from Egypt in what was a repeat of the group stage tie where Police won. The match proved to be a tricky affair for both teams, with the bulk of chances falling to the Kenyan servicemen. In the second half, both teams seemed even, as either failed to take their chances, forcing the match into a shootout. In the shootout, police were fast and converted their first two, as did the Egyptians. Police, however, failed to convert the remaining penalties, while the Eastern Company converted their next to emerge as the winners of the 28th edition of the championship with a 3-2 scoreline.
The Kenyan team played well, and I just want to congratulate also the Kenyan team. We are friends and we are all players. We are from the same continent.
We had our chances but did not take our chances. So we played a good game, and they made sure that they go up to shootouts.
In the third place playoff, Butali Sugar beat Ghana Police to take the bronze, while Kada Queens beat Heartland to the third place. As Orange Telecom's dominance continues in the region, it seems that Kenya's wait for a title in the men's competition will have to go on for another year. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
That's where we leave it on Checkpoint this Sunday night. Many thanks for being part of the broadcast. Remember, our wall-to-wall coverage of tomorrow's launch of the final phase of the mass voter registration exercise begins in the morning at 6 with the first shot. KTN News anchor Kisa Wandaro will be coming to you live from the KICC in Nairobi with Morning Express. You don't want to miss that. We have shows lined up across the day, giving you the latest pictures from across the country as Kenyans begin the last phase of mass voter registration ahead of the general election. Be sure to be part of that. Many thanks for joining us on Checkpoint tonight. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from Nairobi.